The public lecture this video will be over was The Origin of the Universe in the Arrow of Time, presented by Carroll. In this lecture, we learned about how space does not have a direction, but time does, and that is toward the future. We cannot go back and we cannot see the future, but we can remember the past and move forward toward the future. Time is linear in this respect. The part of this lecture that I found most interesting was the idea that the universe could be in an infinite loop, where the universe expands until it's consumed by darkness, and then a little drop separates, and the whole process begins again with a giant bang. While I haven't done any research on this topic since the last lecture, I've done a lot of thinking in my free time about it, and I think it's quite fascinating. It's really interesting to think that the entire universe, something that we can't even comprehend the size of, is just a giant loop that just keeps going. So one of Dr. Carroll's main points was how entropy is kind of the cause for this infinite loop, and how it's the cause for the universe constantly expanding. Entropy is the tendency for the universe towards disorder. For example, if you have your room and you haven't cleaned it in a while, it's not just going to magically clean itself. And if you live in your room without really trying to keep it clean, it's going to gradually get messier and messier and messier. The same thing happens with chemical reactions and the expansion of the universe. And because of the disorder, because expansion causes higher disorder, the universe is constantly expanding, and eventually, according to Dr. Carroll, the entire universe is just going to become one giant black hole, which is eventually going to dissipate out, and there's going to be nothing, just absolutely nothing. And all of this is caused by entropy. That's the main kind of building block of this concept. One concept that wasn't explicitly discussed in Dr. Carroll's lecture that I think is really interesting is how his discussion of choice and how we believe we have a choice. It was a very small side comment that he made, but how we believe we have a choice, and this belief exists in a lot of literature, and that's something I've kind of read a lot about over my years in school and stuff. And in a comic by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons called Watchmen, I'm sure you've heard of it, one of the main characters is Dr. Manhattan, and he's this kind of godlike being, the people believe, but in the comic he states that he is also a puppet. He can just see the strings. So while the people that he helps, the American government and the people in his life, believe that he can see the future and change it, he's just as bound to the strings of the universe as everybody else. So he doesn't actually have a choice in what he does. And it's interesting to relate this concept of choice back to kind of the arrow of time, because we think we have a choice in how the future plays out, but we don't have any proof of us having a choice. But we also don't have any proof that we don't have a choice. And thinking about time and choice and how the universe is going to end up is just really interesting to think about all together. And so that's kind of my last thing that I'd like to say is just think about choice and time and stuff, and just let your mind go wild for a little bit. And I think that's the most interesting thing that kind of could come out of this lecture personally. So thank you for listening,